All right, aviation fans, buckle up. We're taking a deep dive today into a real icon of the skies, the Douglas DC-6.
Yeah, a classic.
It's one of those planes that just oozes, that golden age of travel vibe. We're going to be digging into some amazing articles about this aircraft.
Right.
To see how it went from, wartime workhorse to a symbol of luxury, And what's really cool, some are still flying today.
Well, the DC-6 really represents, I think, a fascinating moment. It came out of World War II.
Yeah.
You needed something that could do the job.
Right.
But it quickly became super important in the post-war travel boom. It's like it kind of embodies that whole shift from conflict to people wanting to explore and connect with each other.
Speaking of connection, my grandmother actually told me stories about flying on DC-6 back in the early 50s. She said everyone would be so dressed up. It was an event. Everyone was so excited to be part of this new era of travel where you could hop continents.
Right.
It wasn't just about getting from point A to point B.
It was an experience.
It was an experience, exactly.
And I think that experience was really shaped by what the DC-6 could do. You know how it was designed. It wasn't just about taking a military plane and slapping some seats in it.
Right.
Douglas really pushed the boundaries of what was possible at the time.
Okay, so we keep hearing this word innovation.
Yeah.
But for someone like me who's not, a total aviation nerd,
Yeah.
what made the DC-6 so special?
Well, for starters, you're talking about a plane that could carry over 100 passengers way back in the 1940s.
Wow.
That was unheard of. Think about it. This meant that airlines could suddenly offer more affordable fares and more people could experience flying.
So it wasn't just for the super rich anymore.
Exactly. The DC-6 was really making air travel more accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
And then you've got the range. This thing could fly up to 4,600 miles on a single tank.
Seriously.
Think about that in today's terms. That's like flying from New York to London nonstop. It literally shrank the world.
Okay. Starting to see why my grandma was so excited about this. But were those long flights any comfortable, though? I mean, we're talking propeller planes here.
Right? Not exactly known for being smooth.
Yeah.
Well, that's where another big innovation comes in the pressurized cabin. Now, this was a complete game changer. This meant you could fly higher above the turbulent weather. Passengers could finally say goodbye to bumpy rides and air sickness. It made those long journeys much more bearable.
That's going to be revolutionary at the time.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider the DC-6 was being used to connect continents.
Right.
It wasn't just about hopping between cities anymore. It was opening up the entire world in a way that ships just couldn't compete with.
So these iconic airlines, we all know, like Pan American Airlines, KLM,
Right.
they all use the DC-6 to establish their global networks.
Exactly. It was at the forefront of this whole new era of interconnectedness where people could experience different cultures and businesses could operate on a global scale. It was unprecedented.
Okay, so all this connectivity is amazing, but was it safe? I mean, were these early long-haul flights reliable?
The DC-6 actually earned a really impressive reputation for safety and reliability. It had a remarkably low accident rate, especially when you consider that aviation technology was still relatively new.
And wasn't the DC-6 chosen as the very first Air Force One?
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to say something about how much they trusted this aircraft.
Absolutely. It was a specially outfitted DC-6 that President Truman chose to fly in. It solidified its image as a symbol of American strength and engineering.
So if it was so successful, why did it eventually fade away from passenger travel? I mean, you don't exactly see them at airports these days.
Well, that's the thing about technology. It never stands still.
Right.
Jet engines came along. They offered greater speed and efficiency, and they inevitably overshadowed propeller-driven aircraft like the DC-6.
So it was outpaced, but not necessarily outclassed.
Exactly. And, the story doesn't end there. The DC-6 was a real workhorse. It wasn't limited to just passenger flights. It found a whole new life in cargo transport, military operations, and even flying to the most remote parts of the world.
Wait, you're telling me that some DC-6s are still flying today?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah. And we're not talking about just a few hobbyists keeping them in the air. These planes are actively working in some really demanding roles, too. One of the most fascinating is using them as air tankers to fight wildfires.
Wow.
Especially in places like northern Alaska where conditions are tough.
That's wild. From luxury air travel to battling wildfires, it's quite the career change.
It is. And, it really comes down to how the DC-6 was designed in the first place.
Yeah.
Robust, reliable, adaptable. They can handle rough, unprepared runways, and they can operate in really harsh weather conditions. Plus, that large capacity makes them perfect for carrying fire retardant.
Yeah, I'm starting to get why people are still so fascinated by this aircraft. It's got this mix of historical importance, technical brilliance, and even a little bit of romanticism.
You hit the nail on the head. That's the beauty of the DC-6. It's a story of innovation, resilience, and adaptability.
Right.
It speaks to a time when things were built to last, and it continues to inspire even in our modern world where technology is constantly changing.
But we are in 2025 now. We can't just get swept up in nostalgia.
Right.
Is there more to this story than just a cool vintage plane? Does the DC-6 actually matter to someone listening to this today?
That's a great question, and one that we'll definitely explore further in our next segment. We've covered a lot of ground today, from its origins in wartime to its surprising modern-day roles.
Yeah.
But to really understand the DC-6's legacy and its lasting impact, we need to dig a little deeper into his influence on society, culture, and even politics.
So stay tuned, listeners. We're just getting started with this deep dive into the world of the Douglas DC-6. There's a lot more to uncover, and trust me, you won't want to miss it.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Douglas DC-6.
We really got into the nuts and bolts of the plane last time.
You did. All those technical innovations and those amazing stories about how some of them are still flying today.
Yeah, but now I think it's time to shift gears a bit and talk about something a little different.
Okay, I'm listening.
The DC-6's presence in popular culture.
Oh yeah, this plane wasn't just transporting people in cargo.
It was transporting our imaginations, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It became this symbol of adventure and this whole idea of a world suddenly made smaller by air travel.
You see it popping up in movies and TV shows all the time.
All the time, yeah. Almost like a character itself.
Speaking of characters, I remember watching It's a mad, 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 mad world with my dad when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
That crazy chase scene with the DC-6 always cracked me up.
That's a classic.
Yeah.
And it shows how the DC-6 could bring a sense of spectacle, even to a comedy.
Yeah.
But it could also play a more serious role.
Right.
Embodying those high stakes of early aviation.
Like in The High and the Mighty.
Yeah.
That DC-4, which is a close cousin of the DC-6, is practically battling the elements alongside the crew.
It becomes this symbol of human resilience against the odds. Those challenges that those early pilots and passengers faced.
But it wasn't always about, nail-biting suspense.
Yeah.
The DC-6 could also represent something softer, more romantic, like in An Affair to Remember.
Ah, yes. The classic tearjerker.
Even though the main journey starts on a ship, that DC-6 at the end becomes like this symbol of fate,
Right.
Missed connections, how life doesn't always go according to plan.
It really is incredible how one plane can evoke so many different emotions.
It really is.
Laughter, suspense, heartache. It really speaks to its versatility, I think, as a storytelling element.
And its appeal wasn't limited to just movies. It was on TV, too. Shows like I Love Lucy. Even The Twilight Zone.
Okay, now that's a range.
Right, what a range. How did the DC-6 fit into those very different worlds?
Well, in I Love Lucy, you have the DC-6 representing this step into the unknown. A chance for Lucy to get into her usual hilarious trouble. It's all very lighthearted and fun.
But then you've got The Twilight Zone with its creepy atmosphere and those thought-provoking stories. I always think of that episode, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet.
Yeah, that one's a classic.
The DC-6 becomes almost claustrophobic,
Right.
trapping the main character with his fear. It plays on those anxieties we have about flying being at the mercy of technology.
I think that makes sense, though.
Yeah.
Back then, flying was still relatively new and mysterious for a lot of people.
True.
And the DC-6 could represent both the excitement and the fear that came with it.
And what about books? Did the DC-6 make any appearances in literature?
Oh, absolutely. The Flight of the Phoenix comes to mind. It doesn't specifically name the DC-6, but it features a very similar aircraft and this amazing story of survival.
Oh, I love that book.
Yeah, it's great.
It shows how the DC-6, even when it's not named, can represent this idea of human ingenuity, pushing beyond limits to overcome adversity.
It's really fascinating how this aircraft that was born out of necessity during the war has become such a big part of our culture.
Yeah, it's almost like it's a character in our collective story.
Right.
Evolving alongside us, taking on different roles depending on what story is being told.
And that's what makes the DC-6 so fascinating, I think. It's more than just a plane. It's a symbol, a metaphor, a reminder of a time when flying was this portal to a wider world.
So we've talked about its presence in movies, TV shows, even novels.
Right. But the influence goes beyond just storytelling. It's even seeped into the world of art and design.
So the DC-6 wasn't just inspiring directors and writers, but painters, photographers, and designers, too.
Absolutely. Think about those classic travel posters from the 50s. You know, those ones with the DC-6 soaring over these exotic landscapes,
Oh, yeah.
promising adventure and escape.
They always make the plane look so glamorous.
Right. And that's exactly what it represented to a lot of people back then. A way to break free from limitations and experience something new and exciting.
But I'm guessing some artists saw the DC-6 as more than just a pretty picture.
Oh yeah, some definitely used it to explore deeper themes. They focused on its mechanical complexity, highlighting the human ingenuity behind its creation.
While others maybe used it to comment on the rise of the machine age,
Exactly.
questioning its impact on society and the environment.
It became this symbol of both progress and the potential consequences of technology.
Interesting.
It's like a reminder that innovation doesn't come for free.
And I bet photographers had a field day with the DC-6.
Oh, they did. There's some amazing photos out there, from elegant shots of the DC-6 against the sunset sky to more documentary-style images of it, playing a role in historical events like Berlin Airlift.
Those photos really capture not just the beauty of the plane,
Right.
but its grit, its resilience, and its role in shaping history.
Exactly. It reminds us that the DC-6 wasn't just about luxury travel. It was a workhorse connecting people, delivering aid, and even shaping political events.
So we've got paintings, photographs. Did its design actually influence other things beyond aviation? I mean, it is a pretty stylish machine.
It is. And you're right, its influence can be seen in everything from cars to trains to even household appliances.
Yeah.
Those sleek lines and that aerodynamic shape were seen as the epitome of modernity.
It's almost like the DC-6's DNA spread to other industries, shaping our ideas about what things should look and feel like.
And, it even influenced fashion. The rise of air travel in the DC-6 era happened at the same time as a shift towards more casual, comfortable clothing. People weren't dressing up in their finest clothes for every flight anymore.
I guess it makes sense. No one wants to be stuck in a suit on a long flight. Comfort starts to become more important than formality.
Right. And the DC-6, with its promise of faster, more accessible travel, played a role in those changes. It wasn't just transporting people, it was transporting us into a new era.
What about architecture? Did those sleek lines and that sense of modernism influence buildings back then?
It's more subtle, but definitely present. The post-war years saw a boom in modernist architecture. Sleek skyscrapers, streamlined airport terminals, even homes embracing clean lines and open spaces.
So it's like the spirit of the DC-6, that blend of innovation and elegance was everywhere.
Exactly. It's a reminder that design trends don't exist in isolation. They're influenced by technology, by social changes, and by those objects that capture our imagination.
It really seems like the DC-6 wasn't just an aircraft, it was a cultural phenomenon.
Absolutely. It's a testament to the power of good design.
Yeah.
The DC-6 wasn't just built to fly, it was built to inspire. And that inspiration has touched everything from art to fashion to the way we think about the world.
I have to say, I'm seeing the world a little differently now. It's amazing how one plane can have such a ripple effect across so many fields.
And those ripples continue to this day.
Yeah.
Even though the DC-6's time as a passenger plane is over its image and its story, still have a certain magic.
But let's be real here. We live in a world that's obsessed with new technology. Does a plane designed in the 1940s really have anything relevant to say to us in 2025? Isn't it all just nostalgia?
That's a question worth considering, and it's one we're going to tackle head-on in our final segment. We've explored the DC-6's past and its cultural impact.
Right.
But what about its future? Can this classic aircraft offer any lessons for our modern world?
Stay tuned, listeners, because our deep dive into the Douglas DC-6 isn't over yet. We're about to land in the present and see just how relevant this iconic aircraft really is in 2025. And we're back for our final descent in this deep dive into the Douglas DC-6. We've explored its beginnings, its tech, its role in pop culture, even its influence on design.
It's amazing how much ground this one plane has covered.
Yeah.
From wartime workhorse to a cultural icon. It's a pretty incredible story.
It really is. But now as we touch down in 2025, I gotta ask, what's the point? Does a plane designed over 80 years ago really have anything to say to us today?
I think that's what's so fascinating about the DC-6. In a world that's obsessed with what's new and shiny, it reminds us that some things just have enduring value.
Okay, I'm listening. Break that down for me. What kind of enduring value are we talking about here?
Well, think about the DC-6's longevity. We talked about how some are still flying today. That's not an accident. It's because it was designed to be tough, adaptable, and well-built.
It's like the difference between, a piece of furniture that's been handcrafted and something that's mass-produced and meant to fall apart. One has a story, a sense of permanence.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And in our world where everything seems disposable, that sense of permanence is rare and maybe even more important now. The DC-6 represents a time when things were built to last. not to be replaced every few years.
But come on, isn't that just romanticizing the past? Modern planes are obviously safer, more fuel efficient, more comfortable than a clunky old DC-6.
Of course, technology has come a long way, but that doesn't mean we should just dismiss the past. There are lessons we can learn from it, even as we embrace the future.
So what lessons from the DC-6 can we apply today? Are you suggesting we go back to using propeller planes for everything?
Not exactly.
Uh-huh.
It's more about the thinking behind it. The DC-6 makes us question this throwaway culture we live in. Can we design things, not just planes, but everything, to be more durable? Can we prioritize quality over planned obsolescence?
That's a tough challenge, especially in a world that's all about consumerism and the next big thing. But you're right, the DC-6 is like a symbol of a different way of thinking.
And beyond the plane itself, there's the human element. The stories of the people who flew and worked on these planes, they tell us something about ourselves.
You're talking about that desire for adventure, for connection, for pushing the boundaries?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And in a world that's becoming increasingly virtual, I think that's where the DC-6 still resonates. That human need to experience something real.
It's like it's reminding us that while technology is great, there's nothing like actually being there, feeling the wind in your hair, hearing those engines roar as you take off.
Well said. And that leads to the question of the future. What role, if any, does the DC-6 have going forward?
It's hard to imagine them making a comeback as passenger planes, but they're clearly adaptable firefighting cargo, even that privately chartered one in the UK.
Right. I think those specialized roles will probably continue. But maybe its most important role now is as a teacher, a storyteller.
What do you mean?
The DC-6 can teach us about design, about resilience, about making things that last. And its story woven into our history and culture can continue to inspire us, remind us of our dreams of flight connection exploration.
It's almost like a bridge between generations, connecting us to the past, but also offering lessons for the future.
I like that. And it reminds us that the past isn't just something dead and gone. It's still alive, shaping who we are, the choices we make.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I have one last thought for our listeners.
Go for it.
The next time you see a DC-6, whether it's in a movie or a photo, or maybe even at an air show, don't just see it as a relic of a bygone era. See it as a chance to think about the things we value, the decisions we make, and the future we want to create.
I couldn't have said it better myself. The DC-6 is a testament to human ingenuity, a reminder that the things that last are often the things that touch not just our minds, but our hearts.
And on that note, we'll bring this deep dive to a close. But the conversation doesn't have to end here. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep finding those stories that remind us what's possible when we combine imagination, innovation, and maybe a little bit of that old school DC-6 spirit.
Until next time, may all your journeys be filled with wonder and discovery.
Safe travels, everyone.